Every Thursday at 8, the entire neighbourhood directing their applause towards our gaff. Bingo wings flapping up and down the terrace, wooden spoons banging on pots, a few frustrated football fans letting off flares. Now, I'm not saying she wasn't sick or nothing, but the woman smokes 40 a day, has done since I was a nipper. Plus, our gaff is only 50 metres from the North Cirque, so yeah, maybe she had corona, but all I'm saying is there were other candidates. Not that the neighbours were having any of it. She was a key worker, an NHS frontline health professional, putting herself in harm's way. How wiping old men's arses made her a war hero, I'm not sure, but they were only short of putting up a statue of her outside the Nissa. Wouldn't hear of taking money, not even when I was loading up on Cronenberg or Cutter's Choice. Dad being a truck driver helped. They were bang on trend too. Fearless logistical masterminds that kept everyone in avocados and Euro. And if the son of these heroes was self-medicating owing to the fear of losing his parents, couldn't he be forgiven? God knows I didn't need food from the shops. I only had to go out for my daily exercise and there'd be 2 lasagnas, 3 cottage pies and a tray of scones on the front step when I got back. Offerings to the heroes. My key was barely in the lock when she started yelling. "That you, Sean?" I grunted, carrying a tray of scones into the kitchen and tried to rejig the cheesecakes and apple pies to free up some room. "I'm out of ice up here." She drove her heel down on the floorboards. "All right, Ma, give me a minute." The scones nearly went into the trifle. "And my lighter's gone dead?" "Well, slow down with the smoking then, will you?" "Why the fuck would I do that?" "Because you're meant to have COVID-19, you thick." The silence creeped its way across the floorboards like a famished rat. "And you're qualified to direct my recovery? How?" "Well, it's a fucking respiratory disease, isn't it?" "Don't use language with your mother." The bedroom door was open now and she was roaring. "But it is, isn't it? I'll be injecting chlorine into my eyeballs before I take medical advice from a lad with half an A level in biology." A low blow. I was retaking the year following a mild case of cannabis psychosis. But after busting my arse to learn all of those cell structures and chemical formulas, it was all going to be decided by some fucking algorithm. If the Scots weren't happy with it, God knows what kind of mutant it would be before it got to us. "Ice, Sean! Get it your fucking self!" I went out back and closed the patio door. I could see why Dad had taken up gardening, or at least had bought the gear. Pots, seeds, trowels, shovels, a huge bag of industrial-grade fertilizer that had fallen off a truck in return for a few TVs that had fallen off his. Progress, so far, consisted of a pair of slug-eaten begonias in a 10-foot flower bed that the cat had started using as a toilet. The miniature lemon tree was now a scratching post, and when the heat wave kicked in, the citrus smell took on a diarrhea-riddled undertone. Poor Dad stealing bags of nitrogen, aka shite, when Twizzle was spraying the place with it for free. The front door clattered open and Dad announced himself with the usual noises. Ma started in about the ice. The patio door slid open behind me. "Is it too much to ask?" Dad's voice sounded like traffic on the M25. "I'll bring it up to her now." Of course, she started in with the coughing when she heard me at the freezer. Dad rushed into the kitchen. "How long she been at that?" "She's been up there smoking like a trooper, Dad." The cough sounded like it was trying to turn her inside out. "How long?" I swear to God, she's been fine all day." I waited for one of Dad's one-liners. the witty quip that said we'd get through it no matter what. But his face was as worn as an A1 underpass. Okay, well, just make sure you're washing your hands, Sean. What? Just, you've been out and about it all. And you haven't. Of course. Of course I have. That's why it's important to remember to do our bit. You're driving all over the fucking country and you're telling me to do my bit. Calm down, son. I've had my A-levels cancelled, my entire future put on pause, and you're telling me to do my bit. Okay, son, don't get worked up. He opened the porch door and directed me back into the garden. Just have a smoke and I'll bring her up the ice. 3 days later, the grades came out. The school set up a virtual results day. Teachers with double chins blinking on the screen. Students with their cameras and microphones off. Of course, they couldn't have a real one with COVID, but it was obvious they knew what was coming. Miss Wynne, who taught me in year 7 and 9 and 11, was giving a speech, apologising about the blatant discrimination, about the flagrant elitism, about the unforgivable attack on our life prospects before I even had a chance to log in and check my grades. I got onto the site, and Miss Wynne was working herself into a proper frenzy now. The hot breath from under her mask was misting up the round glasses all the young female teachers wore to look like that Cortez one from New York. When I was sure she couldn't see me through the mist, I left the call. My pillow and duvet were looking inviting, but Da was still hanging around downstairs. He'd already made himself 4 cups of tea, and I was going to have to put the poor bastard out of his misery. I threw on my boxers, picked up my laptop and went downstairs. He was out back, leaning on the ever-growing pile of fertilizer sacks. I tell you, son, there was a time when a Belfast man hoarding sacks of nitrogen in his back garden could get some negative attention in this country. He dipped his moustache into the tea and gave it a long, appreciative sip. If you don't do something with the sacks before Ma gets out of quarantine, you might wish the feds confiscated them. He laughed and placed his mug down on the fertilizer. Well, I opened the page and read it out loud. Chemistry C, Biology C, Maths C. All honours! Da clapped a hand on my shoulder and I felt like I might drop to the earth. I needed 3 Bs. You got the brains from your mother, that's for sure. He had me in a hug. No truck driving for the university, Mom. When he held me out at arm's length, I must have been wearing a shell-shocked smile. When your mother wakes up, tell her straight away it'll give her a great boost. He went out the front door whistling Danny Boy. It wasn't even going to get me into London Met. I was rolling a spliff and planning a duvet day when Sam gave me a bell. What you get? He was walking outside, probably picking up for tonight. 3 Cs? Fuck. You? 3 Bs? The bastard had literally done no work. Congrats. However, man, whole thing's a fucking farce. Especially if you don't get your place. Oh, fuck it. Easy to say with kings in the bag. I left a bit of an unmade joint on the desk and sat on my bed. You're still coming tonight though, right? Tension suddenly entering Sam's voice. In the next room, Mam started a cough that sounded like gravel falling down a pipe. Think I'll have to give it a miss, man. A dog started barking somewhere in the distance. You're meant to be DJing, fam. Everyone's buzzed to see you after that last set. I know, but I sold about 50 tickets, fam. We've rented lasers and everything. Mam knocked a glass of water off her nightstand and the coughing became a kind of strangled wheeze. Listen, Mam's got this cough and... Fam, you told me she smokes 50 a day. Yeah, but she's in her bedroom drinking cocktails while you're meant to do what? Give up your youth? Have your grades downgraded by some fucking algorithm? I hear you, fam, but what I'm trying to say is, we've all got to do our bit, innit? Are they getting their grades taken? Will they be paying for this fellowship for the rest of their lives? The barking dog gets closer until there's a thud, whimper, and no more. Nah, man. They'll be sitting around the pool in Lanzarote while we work 0-hour contracts till we're fucking 90. All of this because I'm the only one with proper decks. Mam finally stopped coughing and dragged her slippers across the hall into the bathroom. I hung up and crawled back into bed. That night they took Mom away in an ambulance. Paramedics dressed up like something out of Area 51. Me and Dad, not allowed to ride along, would be updated via telephone, should now isolate ourselves for 14 days. Nobody brought food to our door. The hospital called and said Mam was stable and took names and numbers of people we'd been in contact with. After beans on toast, Dad sat at the kitchen opening bills. He was uplit and computer blue while he typed numbers into a spreadsheet with ever-rising anger. The news came on and I got up to make Dad a whiskey in the kitchen. I was going to do it on the rocks, but when I opened the freezer there was only a few cubes left, and I thought Mam was going to need those, was going to be back upstairs banging on the floor, would be swigging gin and smoking fags out the window in no time. When I slid the glass on the table for Dad, I saw he was buying screws and bolts on Screwfix. You're not going to finish the gardening first? Or the gardening's going to have to wait. He slammed the computer shut and followed me into the front room. There'd been an explosion in Beirut. They had some footage of some lad in a kayak getting blown to fuck by a mushroom cloud that looked like something out of a Cold War propaganda film. And then another one from a balcony, and the person filming it was thrown halfway across the room. The news presenter was back on. They were talking about warehouses of nitrogen kept on those docks for 6 years. There were people crying, protesting. Another commentator comes on and says the political establishment are not doing their bit. I look at Dad, and he still hasn't sipped his whiskey. He's staring straight ahead like he's burning a hole straight through the TV. A segment comes on about illegal parties in Manchester. You won't be going to any of those raves anymore, will you, Sean? I feel like I'm upside down in a kayak. Current dragging me down the stream with weeds growing down my throat. Dad turns to look me straight in the eye. You won't be going, will you? On the news, there's images of police breaking up a street party in Finsbury Park. I look away unless I recognize Sam or Talia or Amir. When I look towards the garden, I see the fertilizer is gone.